What's going on, guys? Pegasus and the Wise Guys. And in a moment, you'll probably understand why the hell Patton Oswalt is at the top of this article. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about Valiance, which is an archetype that got revealed last night. And it has a wall of text on each card because it's a Pendulum card, for one. And two, it's just very similar to a card like Endymion, where there is a lot of different effects going on at the same time. And we're here to talk about it. The first card is Shinra, Priestess of the Valiants, which is a level 2 water spellcaster pendulum effect monster with 500 attack and 500 defense and a pendulum scale of 1. The pendulum effect says, during your main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in this card's column. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except Valiance monsters and monsters from your extra deck. All of them say this. I'm letting you know that now. I really feel like that's a really interesting new mechanic that's being added to the game, and it's definitely something we're going to talk about in another video. Can't actually test right now because Dueling Book is down, but I definitely want to show some combos as soon as it's actually up. If you control this card, getting into the monster effect, if you control this special summon card, you can add one Valiant spell from your deck to your hand, and if this card is moved from a main monster zone or monster zone in general, you can add one Valiance monster from your deck to your hand. Really interesting. Scion Archer of the Valiants is a really interesting card as well. It is a level 4 water spellcaster pendulum effect monster with 11 attack and 1100 defense. Pendulum scale of 1 as well. So all the humans pretty much have a pendulum scale of 1. That'll make sense here in a moment. The pendulum effect says the same thing as before. Again, during the main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in its column. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except Valiance monsters. Makes sense? They all say that. The monster effect says you can only use the first and second monster effects of this card's name once per turn. The first effect says if you control this special summon card, you can target one effect monster on the field and toss a coin. If it's heads, negate that monster's effect. If it's tails, its attack becomes cut in half. The second effect says if this card's moved, you basically get to target a card on the field and toss a coin again. If it's heads, destroy the card. If it's tails, return it to the hand. So spot removal, regardless, it's just pretty much is deemed on the coin flip where it's going to go. But as long as you have this card moving in the monster zone, you pretty much have it all squared away. Nuzuki, Ninja of the Valance, is a level 6 water spellcaster pendulum effect monster with 18 attack and 18 defense. And again, guys, I really feel like it's something to be said about all of them having the same attack and defense, because it's a very obvious card. That Swordmaster card can probably help you search cards like this. It's just something to think about. I think it's one of the Gizmek cards as well. I don't remember what the hell the card is, but that's probably something to look into. Anywho, the monster effect says, because all of them say the same pendulum effect, the monster effect says you can target one other monster in the main monster zone and move it to an adjacent monster zone. That's very interesting, and they'll probably have something come up in relation to that. The other effect says if this card is moved from a monster zone to another, you can target one Valiance monster card in your spell and trap zone and special summon it. Very interesting as well. Hojo, Warrior of the Valiants, is a level 8 water spellcaster pendulum effect monster with 1900 attack and 1900 defense. The pendulum scale says the same thing, but the monster effect is different this time again on both of them. And this card says you can target one face-up card in the spell and trap zone and return it to the hand. And the second effect says if this card is moved from a monster zone to another, you can fusion summon one Valiance fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, as well as cards in your pendulum zone. That last little bit is really interesting because it says as well as cards in your pendulum zone. That pretty much creates an enormous ceiling for a lot of these cards to be able to tap into something that we've never actually probably seen before. Valiance Buster Baron, again, is an 800 attack and 800 defense monster with a level 2 being attached to it, and it's also a fire machine. As far as the first effect, again, it's the same, but the second effects, which are differing again in this scenario, say if you control this special summon card, you can target one of the Valiance monster in your main monster zone and move that to an adjacent zone. If this card is moved from a monster zone to another, you can target one card in the pendulum zone, place it face up in the adjacent spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. Valiance Voltage Viscount. Valiance Voltage Viscount is a very interesting card as well because it also that's equal in attack and defense, and this time it's a level 4 fire machine pendulum effect monster, the pendulum scale effect being the same. The monster effect says if this card you control that is special summoned, you can place one face-up Valiance Pendulum monster from your extra deck face-up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. And the second effect is if this card is moved from a monster zone to another, you can place one face-up Valiance Pendulum monster from your extra deck into your Pendulum zone. So that's a little bit more of the recursion element added into that as well. Mad Marquis seems to have the special effect that if you control some of these other fire machine effect monsters that have Valiance in their names, you get to spam them out for free. And the first and second effect on the monster saved during the main phase, roll 6-sided dice and excavate cards from the top of your deck equal to the result. And if you do, you can add one of those excavated Valiant cards from your deck to your hand. The second effect saying the same thing as far as dice rolls are concerned, and it's directly tied to that. I really feel like all of these cards are very interesting and very different. As far as Dominator Duke, again, the same kind of thing. If you have Fire Valiance monsters, you get to special summon them out for free. That's what all of those do. That you can target one set card in the spell and trap zone, and it cannot be activated this turn like a Trickstar Light Stage. And the second effect says if this card is moved from a monster zone to another, you can target one face-up monster in your opponent's main monster zones and take control of it in a Change of Heart style effect. And if you do, it is treated as a Valiance monster, so it pretty much Change of Hearts them and it changes their name. That's also really interesting. Finally, we get into some of the higher scales. All of those were low scales, but this Spellcaster Fusion Pendulum effect monster, probably after you summon it, goes back into the scale before even really deep diving it and reading it. And shout out to the amazing artwork. We saw the artwork about a week ago and we didn't know what the hell it was. But basically, it takes 3 Valiance monsters, and the first effect says during the main phase quick effect, you can target one effect monster in your opponent's main monster zones and pretty much presto changeo them into a continuous spell. I've never actually seen that, and that's also really interesting. The last little bit of the fusion says if this card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you get to put it back into your Pendulum zone, and obviously that's where the scale 10 comes into play. Another scale 10 that will come into play is Grand Duke, which is another one of these cards that have a high scale as well as numerous effects that are really going to be key and interesting as well. So the fast synopsis: it can special summon itself into your main monster zone. It can move one monster in your main monster zone to an adjacent monster zone, and then while it's actually out onto the field, if this card is special summoned, you can target one monster in your opponent's spell and trap zone and return it to the hand, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack, like a Ring of Destruction style effect. And then this card gains attack equal to half of the damage that they took, helping you to push over big, gigantic monsters with high attack values. The field spells are a really interesting element to the deck as well. Shinra Banso is the field spell, the first of the field spells. There's multiples, and this card says when this card resolves, place one Valiance field spell from your deck face up in your opponent's field zone, except for this one. And then the second effect says if there are 2 cards in the field zone, the turn player can target one monster in their spell and trap zone. The turn player special summons to their main monster zone. Just keep in mind that it has to be within the same column. The second field spell says pretty much the same in the first effect, and the second effect, the second part of it, says if there are 2 cards in the field zones, the turn player can target one effect monster in their opponent's main monster zones in the same column as a monster the turn player controls. Place the targeted monster face up in its controller's spell and trap zone and in the same column as the continuous spell. Guys, I'm really fascinated by this archetype. Really interesting effects, really interesting artwork. Let me know what you think about this archetype down in the comments, and we will have soon to come videos talking specifically about this archetype some more and some combos. I'll see you guys next time. Make sure you pick up the mat. It's out, and I will bow before Emperor Penguin. YG baby, Pegasus out. Arrivederci.